In the contentious issue of abortion, questions are often raised.
How can you deny an abortion to a young girl who's a victim of incest?
How can you force a victim of violent rape to give birth to the rapist's child?
How could you bring a deformed child into the world just for the mother to watch it suffer and die?
How can you force a woman to die from an ectopic pregnancy where the baby will die anyway if she can be saved by an abortion?
Who can best answer these questions? Concerning the issue of abortion, the questions are often raised. What about rape or incest? What about fetal deformity? What about threats to the life or health of the mother? We have traveled far and wide to meet with people who have actually been involved in these difficult circumstances. I'm Keith Humphrey, and here are their stories.
When I was a child, I was molested for several years by my stepfather.
At the age of 15, I was a victim of date rape, and as a result of that, I became pregnant.
Before the weekend was over, I had become victim to an acquaintance rape that had happened.
I wasn't devastated about the baby as much as I was devastated about the rape. The baby was a highlight.
My mother was raped at 13 years old. In 1972. She had me when she was 14 on July 20th, 1973.
My daughter's birth mother was raped at 13. She is basically all of the hard cases that you've ever heard put forward by those who are abortion supporters.
I told her, I said, I just want to tell you one other thing. I want to thank you for giving me life and not taking my life.
It was a real shock to find out that I in fact had an anencephalic baby.
Why is it that my life is expendable to you?
And I hope that people will listen to the children of rape conception and the mothers who've either had us or aborted my peers and know the truth.
When a child is conceived through rape or incest, the mother is often pressured to abort against her will by the perpetrator or family members who just want the problem to go away. But this is the worst possible situation for a woman to have an abortion. It only compounds and exacerbates the feelings of trauma, guilt, and shame that accompany the rape, to such a degree that some say it's a second violation of their person. But when a mother finds the strength to give birth to her child, she is encouraged to be a better person for their sake. She is comforted by the natural human love and affection from her baby. She finds hope and redemption through the process to such a degree that they will say that if they had to suffer it all over again, they would do so for the sake of their child.
When I was a child, I was molested for several years by my stepfather. I became pregnant the first time when I was 12. He gave me some pills, he punched me in the stomach, and he forced me to miscarry my child. Nobody knew, so the abuse continued. When I became 13, I became pregnant again. This time I hid it from him. I went and I told my mom. She got us out of that situation. Police were called, they arrested him. He ended up going to jail for 10 years. The court ordered me to see therapists and see doctors and everything else that an abuse victim needs and a pregnant person needs. I was told by friends, by some of my own family members, by several people within the court system, within the public within churches, that I should take care of this and not carry the baby to term, because it would make it easier for me to just forget about what happened and to move on with my life. But when I was 13 and 14 years old and I didn't know how to deal with it, and I was having flashbacks, I had this little bitty baby. My mom would come in and put her in my arms, and I could see this precious little face, this teeny tiny little face, because she was a tiny little thing. And it gave me hope. It gave me a reason to get up in the morning, because Instead of the fear and the dread that I had been living with for years, I now had this child that I looked forward to hearing her giggle and seeing her smile, and a child that I could work for to maybe make a better life for. Someone that I could watch over and make sure nothing happened to her. She gave me a purpose. When people try to use rape and incest to justify abortion, it infuriates me. I was a 13-year-old child and I was nothing special. If I could do it and have that child help me heal at 13, anybody can do it, and that child will help them heal. God gives you this child as a blessing out of something horrible. It's your beauty from your ashes. It's the only good thing you will get out of that situation. And when they claim that aborting a child out of rape or incest helps the mother, I've had that too, and that hurts forever, for years afterwards. Having the child heals. I can see each and every choice I made, and each and every step I took was guided by God. He's the one that got me through it. He held me up when I couldn't stand anymore. He held my hand and walked me through it when I was just about to break down. He's the one that gave me Josie so that I could live through this and heal from this. Anything done to me is nothing compared to the joy I've had with Josie. As ornery as she can be sometimes. If I knew from the beginning, yes, I would do it all over again. I would go through every second of it.
At the age of 15, I was a victim of date rape, and as a result of that, I became pregnant. And I was coerced into having an abortion by going to Planned Parenthood. After they gave me a pregnancy test and confirmed it, they said that since I was only 15 years old, that I really needed to have an abortion because I was too young and I was still in high school. So I did have the abortion, which was a very traumatizing experience. I remember, one specific thing I remember was when they were starting the anesthesia, I heard my mother's voice at the door. And she was saying, "Is my daughter in there?" And they said, "Ma'am, you can't come in here, you have to go back to the waiting room." So I know that she was trying to stop what was happening. As a result of having that abortion, I had 5 miscarriages during the 18 years I was married, and 3 of those miscarriages were tubal pregnancies that required emergency surgery, and the last one I almost died. They had to give me a blood transfusion, was just in 2004. And so I'm completely unable to have children as a result of the abortion that I had. So it was not better for me. I spiraled into a horrible lifestyle after the abortion with drinking and drugs and promiscuous sex. The Lord healed my heart. I had a lot of anger issues, a lot of blaming, a lot of self-hatred, and He taught me how to forgive all of the people involved in the abortion. I had an awesome opportunity to forgive the person that raped me and impregnated me. And I said, "Well, you know, I've forgiven him." And she says, "Well, I'm going to talk to him." So she confronted him about it and came back and told me, you know, that he was sorry.
It was spring of 1991, Easter weekend. A girlfriend and I decided that we were going to go to Memphis, Tennessee and kind of do the Elvis thing. And the weekend had gotten away from us. And before the weekend was over, I had become victim to an acquaintance rape that had happened. It was about 30 days after that that I found out that I was pregnant. took a pregnancy test on my lunch hour, actually. And I had always grown up convinced, a strong conviction that abortion was murder. But when you find yourself caught in the trap, it ended up being one of the first things I thought about was going ahead and getting an abortion. Once I found out I was pregnant, I couldn't really contain the pressure of that news to myself, and I had some pretty great parents who always told me if anything ever happens, you know, you can always tell us anything. So I took advantage of that with my mom one night and explained to her what had happened and watched her heart break right in front of me. And I told her that, you know, I was considering an abortion because I didn't know any other way out of the situation. She did and took an opportunity to tell my father, and he met me on the front porch the following day, himself broken and in a lot of tears. And we walked into the house, and he wanted to know how things had unfolded, and then he had said that abortion is murder, and we're not going to do that. And honestly, I felt in that truth a new liberty, a new freedom to go ahead and do the next best thing for us. And so I decided from that point on then that we were going to start looking for adoptive parents for the baby, and walked through that process of looking at profiles on parents, and eventually I had decided on a couple from the northern states, and by the time it came time to have the baby, they came to see her, but personally for me it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be to go ahead and say goodbye. So I actually called a girlfriend of mine who was a mother of 2 twin boys that were 2 years old, single mom, and it said, tell me everything, you know, horrible about being a single parent. Just try to convince me that it's the wrong decision, and there was nothing she could say to convince me otherwise. This baby looked me in the eyes, and there was just no way that I could just not be her mom. Being a single parent obviously has a lot of pressures to it. But there has never been a time, ever once, that I've ever regretted the decision. There was just an increase of love and purpose that she brought into my life with that choice. There was a new drive in my life to do well by her because she deserved it. I knew from the beginning that there was nothing of her conception that needed to reflect on her value.
I've never felt that I've been lacking in life, which I know, despite the circumstances, is kind of crazy for people to think, you know, maybe she's felt without a father or felt like a void in her life, and I've never had that lack in my life. I think God's given me a purpose in life to talk to girls who've been in situations like my own or who are in families that don't have the best family life. She doesn't have the best father figure, and since God has helped me in my life through the circumstances that I've been put in and put through, I feel like I have a big testimony of my own to be able to share with people.
Well, I was a college student. I was a junior in college, and when the rape occurred, and I came home after I realized that I was pregnant, and I came home, and I had to tell my mom and my dad that I was expecting this baby, and the situation that had happened, that it had been rape. It wasn't anything that I had volunteered to do, and I was really happy about the way that they were so supportive of me, and both of them, my mom and my dad, were both really there for me during that period. She said, well, we're going to have this baby together. And I had a lot of support from my parents, but I was pressured to abort by other family members, and they were telling me things like, you don't know what's in the genes. He could be a crazy man. If he raped you, you know, it could be something in the genes, you know, and then you have a baby that's going to be crazy and do crazy things. But I had grown up in the church, and we had discussed life and how life was created, and that only God can create life. Man may be a tool that he uses, but only God can give that child breath and life. And that stuck so with me to it just wasn't even a thought that I pondered that much to abort that baby. And with the support of my mom and dad, I knew that I didn't even have to consider that. And so when I felt that baby to move in my stomach, it really became real to me that this was an actual human being that I was carrying. And I got excited about it. I was really excited to have this child because I felt it. It moved. It was a person. And it was going to be something that I can love. And I had people asking me a lot about, well, won't that, if you have this baby, you won't ever be able to forget, how it was conceived and all of that. But when Clarissa was born, and I looked down at that little old fat black baby with all the big old loopy curls in his hair, no thoughts of that guy came to me. It was just, this is my child. This is my baby. And she had this big old smile, and I just fell in love with her. I fell in love with her before she was born. I fell in love with her when she kicked in my belly. But when she was actually born and I was able to hold that child, it was just precious to me. And I have no regrets for having this child. When I think about the life that Christ gave, he gave his life to save us. And he didn't have that personal relationship like I would have with a child that's growing in my belly. He didn't have that. But yet, he gave his life for me. And so I'm going to kill this child so that I can live? Nah, I don't think so.
And so when she explained to me what happened and how I was conceived, I wasn't upset or angry or anything. In fact, I was actually sort of proud at the fact that I was raised the way I was, and my mom was so strong to raise me by herself, considering, all this had happened to her. And, I wasn't angry at him or anything like that. It had been so long. I had a good life.
I was 2 weeks after my 17th birthday. I was at work. I got raped. I didn't remember several days. Don't even remember how I got home. Probably about 3 weeks later, I started wondering what was going on, thought something was wrong with me, and found out eventually that I was pregnant, and was devastated and scared and confused. And my mom was there for me and, told me she would support me whatever choice I made, but had a friend come over and kind of did an intervention where they counseled me to go for an abortion, and strongly encouraged it, and already had a plan in place for finances and travel and everything. They were going to take me to Dallas, and I told her I needed to think about it, and immediately went to my room and started praying, and they made it sound really good because I could go to college, which was the dream, pursue my art career, and do the things that I already had planned to do. And it didn't pan out that way, because when I got alone with God, and I couldn't do it. It wasn't in me. I couldn't do it. It wasn't the baby's fault. And I told my mom that sink or swim, the baby and I were in it together. And she didn't argue. She didn't throw any fits or anything. She said, okay. I wasn't devastated about the baby as much as I was devastated about the rape. The baby was a highlight. It was like a consolation prize, kind of. It was something to hold on to stay in the here and now and to deal with and to stay strong for. Having her in my life gave me a reason to keep moving forward and a purpose for not sitting down and giving in to self-pity or fear or anger. There was a lot of anger, a lot of rage. But it wasn't towards her. It was towards the fact that she and I were both in a situation that neither one of us asked for. And I told her, I said, we're not leaving this room until you tell me what's wrong, because I'm concerned about you. And that's when I found out she had overheard. And her question to me was, how can you love me? And I told her, and I believe this with everything in me, that she was not a mistake, because God doesn't make mistakes. That she was a surprise to me, but He knew she was there. And I told her she was a gift to me, coming out of a really bad place, so that I could get through what happened, and that I really believe that that's why He gave her to me. Because when I see her, I just see beauty. I see love. I see hope. And she gave me strength. She made me who I am, to a certain degree. And I'm very thankful, because without her, life would have been a whole lot different. I wouldn't have my grandchildren. I wouldn't have my daughter.
Well, I think it was very difficult for her because she was pressured by other people to abort my mother, but she knew that it wasn't the right idea, because it wasn't the baby's fault, it was the man's fault. So she couldn't blame the baby for what had happened to her. And it would have been the same as murder if she would have aborted the baby, because the babies are innocent.
A human being is so much more than a mere function of their DNA. Just because someone was conceived in rape does not mean that they are somehow more predisposed to certain bad behaviors. A person can become anything in this world, irrespective of the circumstances by which they came into it.
She wanted to hold me one more time before relinquishing me to the orphanage. And to avoid her getting attached to me, they told her that I had died. So all this time and throughout her life, she assumed I had died for some kind of complication, but yet intuitively she felt like I was alive out there somewhere. She didn't know why, she just sensed it, that I was alive. A person came up to me and told me after I'd made this speech, I had said in my speech there was two things I wanted. One was to be able to tell my biological mother that life turned out great, she didn't make a mistake, and I wanted to thank her for giving me life and not taking my life. And I thought that was very important for a mother to know, and I would think any mother would want to know that, that they made the right decision and that life turned out well for the child that they gave up for adoption. God thinks I'm legitimate. I have a purpose. You know, they say there's two great days in your life, the day you were born and the day you found out why. So my mission was, what is my purpose in life today? And what does God have in store for me? People stereotype you as you'll end up being no good. And a classic example of this, a good friend of mine, he is a probation officer in Pueblo, Colorado. He was talking about how him and his wife were having trouble having kids. And I told him, I said, well, why don't you adopt? And so he never knew I was adopted. And I said, why don't you adopt? And he says, oh, those kids are terrible. They end up being criminals, they're no good, they're a pain. I would never do that. And I said, well, let me tell you a story about a boy that was adopted when he was 5 years old. And I start telling my story in the third person. And how this young boy grew up with adopted parents and became a law enforcement man and retired and ended up becoming the mayor. And well, he knew then that I was talking about myself. And the kind of humorous side about his response was he looked at me and he stared and he said, dude, I'm sorry. And I said, you don't need to be sorry, but what needs to change is how you view people. And this time she answered the phone and I called from a different number. And I said, Gloria, don't hang up. This is Ray. I want to explain a couple of things to you. And if you never want to meet me, I'm okay with that. I just want you to hear me out. And she was quiet. And I told her, I said, I want you to know that Life turned out great. I gave her a little chronological story about my career as a policeman, how I was adopted and retired and published a book and became the mayor of Fort Collins and was elected for 3 terms. And the more I told her, the more she listened. And it's a mom's curiosity. And she said, no, I want you to know, not only for health reasons, but I just think you should know the story and what happened. And she went on to explain that she was violated against her will. I told her, I said, I just want to tell you one other thing. I want to thank you for giving me life and not taking my life.
When I met my mother, as I said, she was in a wheelchair, and I knelt down beside her and we talked for a little while until we got used to each other, and I asked her what were the circumstances of my conception. When she told me, I broke down crying and I placed my head in her lap, and she patted me on the shoulder and she says, honey, stop your crying. I've forgiven those men, and look what God has done. He's brought you back to me. God is faithful. She had prayed for 48 years. Some people pray for a long time and they don't see answers to their prayer. Doesn't mean God hasn't heard. She consistently prayed, and 48 years later, her prayers are answered. And when she said she forgave those men, I said, then I can't not forgive them. I have to forgive them. The Bible says that if we do not forgive, we will not be forgiven, and that was Jesus' words. So many times we don't think about the legacy that women will leave giving birth to one child. My mother gave birth to me. I gave birth to 2 sons, and each one of my sons has 2 sons. So now my mother has saved 7 people. It's far more reaching than just one baby. So many people say that we are demon seeds, that we're putting out bad genes in society. I have to say that my oldest son is an ordained minister. So if you want to say that the grandson of a rapist couldn't possibly turn out to be anything good, or the daughter of a rapist couldn't become anything good, it's our choice. We become what we want to become. I could be evil at any time I wanted to. I don't want to. Everyone has that choice. And that's what real choice is about. Not about eliminating one person or another, but about being good or being bad. And it all depends on an individual, not where I came from. And the more women that I see and talk to, the more it validates that women don't want to get rid of their children conceived in rape. In fact, they hurt more in cases of rape when they have abortions, because I've been told that in the case of rape, the woman survived, but then she turns around and becomes the aggressor. A woman can never turn back the hands of time after killing her baby, and she has to think about that for the rest of her life. But if she does give birth to the child, it's physically better for her, it's mentally better for her, and if she chooses to place the child for adoption, which in cases that I've seen, hundreds of women have given birth and chosen to raise their children. I just think that people don't think this thing through, and people don't want to talk about their rape pregnancy experience. And now it's coming forward. And I hope that people will listen to the children of rape conception and the mothers who've either had us or aborted my peers and know the truth. I have value that is intrinsic because God created me.
My mother was raped at 13 years old in 1972. She had me when she was 14 on July 20th, 1973. My grandmother told her she would get an abortion. One way or the other, she would get an abortion, and my mother refused, and that's something you didn't do, is tell my grandmother no. But she did, she refused, and it was a huge fight in her house for a good month and a half or 2 months, but finally she saw she wasn't giving in. My mother was not giving in to pressure. She would not be bullied, I guess, or forced into having an abortion. And then it was suggested that she would give me up for adoption, and adoption's great, it's a wonderful thing, but she wanted to raise me. It wasn't my fault that she was raped, and she wanted to raise her baby, and she did. Later in life, God continued to show me I had questions still. Why would I be conceived in rape? Why would God want me? What purpose would He ever have for me? And I guess when my son was born, I knew His purpose for me. Every time I looked at that child, I knew. When Cade was 4, I knew that he was going into the ministry. I knew where that child's heart was, and it was in Christ. And then 5 years later, I had Sydney, and there's another child, and she's a little bit more challenging, but she loves the Lord, and she's on fire. And God keeps showing me His purpose over and over and over again of why He let me come into this world, why He wanted me to be here. He has a plan and a purpose for any life that is created, whether it is created in rape, whether it is created in the love and confines of marriage. He creates life, not us. I came face to face with my mother's rapist one day when I was at work. And I knew it was him because I'd always known his name. I had to wait on him and his family. I was working at a physician's office, and I'm sitting there, and I'd called my mother and I said, "Pray for me." He walked in with his family, "Pray for me." And they came up to my counter, and I assisted them, handshaking. I don't know how. It was not evident. He didn't recognize me. He didn't know who I was. He left. And then it wasn't a few weeks later, we were in the emergency room, my mom and me, with Sydney, my baby, and he walked in, and you could see it on his face. The color left him. And he knew who I was. But at that time, I had never been face to face with him. I'd never had to face him. But I did, and when I faced him, I was angry, I was hurt, and God spoke to me. I had to forgive him. He kept speaking it, and I was like, God, I don't know if I can forgive him. And He kept speaking, and He said, you have to forgive him, because as long as you don't forgive him, he's got a hold on your life. So I forgave him. I even told him I forgave him. He called my mother a liar. I told him I forgave him anyway.
My daughter's birth mother was raped at 13. She is basically all of the hard cases that you've ever heard put forward by those who are abortion supporters. She was very young, 13 years old. She was a victim of rape. They told her something was wrong with her baby. Her baby was biracial, and nobody would want a biracial rapist baby. Her birth mom was told that she did need to go forward with the abortion because if she didn't consent to the abortion, she would die. They told her she was far too young to carry a pregnancy to term and deliver a baby. She was actually taken in for the abortion, and they had started the procedure. They found that she was 20 weeks pregnant, so this would be a second trimester abortion, and she was on the table in the stirrups, and they had started the procedure on her after they had first told her that at 20 weeks a baby's not even formed yet. So they had to stop the abortion procedure because she was in so much pain. So Jalen is an abortion survivor. They had actually started the procedure on her mother, and she, as a result of that, has some challenges. She has some special needs that she's dealing with, and she will have these challenges for the rest of her life. So she's got she's got the rape hard case, she's got the something's wrong with your baby hard case, and she's got life of the mother, but add that she's also she has special needs. She's an abortion survivor. Her birth mother was 13, very young, and unable to even get a driver's license or a job, and she was in 8th grade, so no family support. So Jalen really, really is a miracle that she survived, and that her birth mother found the strength and the courage to stand up for her and carry her. As for our family personally, oh my goodness, the things that we have learned, I mean, just incredible patience, and you have to have a servant's heart to be able to do this. It's taught us that, you know, you really have to get down and serve in a completely different way. It's one thing when you have biological children who have all, you know, their typical needs, where you have to have patience and take care of them. It's different when you're entrusted with a child by another human being, and then that child has special needs that require just a completely different level. I mean, we just had to go to a different level than we even realized we were capable of. I think if you'd asked us prior to adopting, and we would have kind of hesitated, I'm not sure if I could do that, but through God, I mean, we know now that we have a lot more strength than we gave ourselves credit for. Our other children, I mean, they are learning lessons that we could have told them, we could have talked to them about, we could have read them stories, but they are learning that life, all life, is really valuable, that it doesn't make any difference if the child is rape conceived or special needs or of a different race or whatever their abilities, anything. None of that makes any difference. They are worthy of respect and dignity. Their life is valuable because they are made in the image of God, and I could have told them that all day. They are living that now. They have learned empathy in a way that they never would have had they not had this opportunity, and they're learning to just have a tenderness towards their sister and her friends that are also special needs. Jalen is a worshiper. The girl loves to go to church. She loves to sing as loud as possible. You can hear her over the entire crowd belting it out, and she'll go up front, she'll throw her hands up in the air and sing, and she likes to get down and pray. She'll get on her knees and pray, and she'll be in tears. I've never seen a child do that before, and it's so unique. It's amazing to be able to witness something like that. She has a heart for other special needs children. She can pick them out of a crowd. We're at a birthday party and there's all these other kids around. She's not paying any attention to them, and a mother comes walking through the yard and she's carrying her child on her hip, and my daughter goes right up to her, and the little girl turns around and she has Downs, and my daughter's like, "Hi, what's your name?" And that's who she stuck with the entire time. Her best friend in school is a little boy named Judah, and he is he's an adopted son of friends of ours, and he's a victim of shaken baby. He's blind, he's mostly deaf, he's in a wheelchair, and Jalen loves him to pieces, and he can hear the tone of her voice, and she sings to him and he laughs and smiles, and it is just amazing. She loves to pet his face and hold his hands. And the other thing about Jalen is she is a complete and total daddy's girl. I love that because God knew that she had that heart to be a daddy's girl, and in her situation she wouldn't have had a father figure.
Jay, who's your best friend?
Daddy.
And?
You.
Abortion is not health care. It never benefits the health of a mother to kill her baby. Though a difficult pregnancy might present a potential liability to modern medicine, it does not present a problem that cannot be solved. A baby can be delivered prematurely even if the baby does not survive. Abortion itself carries risks to the life and health of the mother, including increased risks for potential breast cancer, tubal pregnancies, and premature births.
I'm a family physician and pediatrician. I've been practicing medicine for about 12 years. And I've had to, as a physician, address the life of the mother exception. I had a pro-life woman in my office, was completely against all abortion, but she had a tubal ectopic pregnancy. She was told by the OB that the baby cannot survive, 0% survival rate. And so he urged her to get a methotrexate abortion. Now, you don't have to do a methotrexate abortion. As a matter of fact, the standard of care is watchful waiting, because the vast majority of these babies will die and the pregnancies will subside on their own, and the mother doesn't need surgery. She doesn't need an abortion. But he was protecting himself, and he ordered a methotrexate abortion. And 3 weeks later, this woman was bleeding profusely. So he did an ultrasound, and to his horror, he discovered there was a pregnancy in the uterus. So either she had twin pregnancies, one in the fallopian tube in the uterus, or, as has been well documented, the tubal ectopic pregnancy dislodged and reattached in the uterus. And it turns out methotrexate abortions are not good health care after all, because it killed the baby, both babies possibly, or at least the one that would have been a healthy pregnancy in the uterus. And so this woman was horrified to discover that she was unable to conceive later on, this pro-life woman. God's word forbids attempting, intentionally trying to kill a child. But if you facilitate delivery of a child and the child inadvertently dies, there's no crime that's been committed. There's no ill will or malice there. The Dublin Declaration is a statement of physicians in Ireland who are trying to prevent abortion being legalized in Ireland right now. There's a tremendous push to justify it based on the exceptions. The exceptions is like the little pinprick hole in the dam where the water starts leaking out. And it's just a matter of time before the dam comes crumbling down. And they're trying to, based on the life of the mother exception, justify and legalize abortion in Ireland. And these physicians are saying it's never necessary to kill the baby. You can facilitate delivery and try to save the mother and the child. You do not have to dismember and kill these babies. Some have argued, I'm pro-life, but I need to make this exception. We got to allow the killing of babies conceived through rape. We've got to allow the killing of babies conceived in incest, or babies that might be born deformed, or babies who might die anyway. When you make exceptions to the divine prohibition against killing, you have violated that commandment. You know, James 2:10 says, he that keeps the whole law and offends in one point is guilty of all. And a murderer has no eternal life abiding in them, whether you've killed 1 or 100. And so you can't say you're compliant with God's standard for life, that is, never intentionally kill an innocent child. And yet you've intentionally killed an innocent child. That violates the law of God, and He is the author of right and wrong. Relative morality fails to justify itself, much less a standard by which we can live. God is the author of right and wrong, and God said it's always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent person. And the devil's out there giving people alternatives. Yeah, it's wrong most of the time, but you can make this exception. What do we think of a man who's been faithful to his wife his whole life, but he makes an exception on a business trip with the secretary? He's an adulterer. I don't care if he was faithful most of his life. In the same way, if you've never killed an innocent person except one time, you're a murderer, and you've violated God's standard, and you need to repent. God's ways are always the best way to live. If you're driving down the road and you see a car go off a bridge into the water, and you dive into the water to try to heroically save the two people in this car. Let's say if you pull the driver of the vehicle out of the car, but you're unable to save the passenger, would it therefore be justifiable for you to take out your gun and shoot the passenger you're unable to save? No, it would not. That would be murder, even if that person was going to die anyway. It's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent person because they're going to die anyway. We should try to save them both.
My mom used to tease me all the time, telling me that I almost killed her giving birth to her, when she gave birth to me, and I would tease her back. I'm like, whatever. And she didn't mean anything negative by it. She was just being silly. But back in September of last year, I called my mom up and I asked her, and I said, "Okay, Mom, what actually happened to me?" And that's when she really started telling me that I was an ectopic pregnancy. She went in the hospital, as I said, with medical complications. Actually, as she shared with me, she was bleeding. And they wanted to abort me. But her words were, if my baby have to die, then I will too. And when you think about that, to me, it brings to mind the scripture where Jesus said, no greater love has a man than this, than a man that would lay down a life for his friend. But in this case, it was a mother willing to sacrifice her life for a child. And in the actual birth process, because see, here's the ironic thing. They were willing to perform a C-section to abort me, because they would have had to. Being a tubal pregnancy, there's no way you would have been able to use an abortion instrument. But they were not willing to perform a C-section to save my life. You can't really describe the emotions knowing that your mother, the lady in which you spent the 9 months, or in my case, the 7 months, that she was willing, despite all the risk to her giving birth to me, she was willing to say, my baby's life is more important than mine. That takes strength and courage, and really all I would be able to say is thank you, Mom. Thank you. To those who support the exceptions. Why is it that because I was not conceived under circumstances that you find desirable, why is it that my life is expendable to you?
It was a real shock to find out that I in fact had an anencephalic baby. She's the same baby. She was the same baby, even born with deformities. She was the same baby that was conceived. She was the same baby I delivered and went instantly into the presence of the Lord. It was the baby that he was looking at and probably letting sit in his lap, perhaps, I hope. I don't know what happens with them in heaven, but I know they're well taken care of. I look forward to seeing her again. Because then when you deliver, and I delivered a stillborn at 7 months, there's no guilt. Well, being an RN, I had learned that it's much healthier always to carry a pregnancy to term, for the mechanisms, for the processes, for the body to be able to fully recover, for a baby to go and be delivered in a natural, timely way. That's much healthier. There's a much higher incidence of breast cancer for terminating a pregnancy. It has to do with the estrogen levels and that kind of thing. It's always healthier to take a baby fully to term than to terminate or to have an abortion or anything like that.
Some 9 out of 10 babies diagnosed with Down syndrome in the womb are aborted before they ever see the light of day. It is presumed that parenting these children will be so difficult that it would be better if they were never born. But if we ask the actual parents of Down syndrome children about their experience, we find that the special blessing of having these children far outweighs the inconvenience of their disability.
I'm sure we had a little bit of fear when we first had a child that was different and we didn't know what was wrong, and not knowing can be fearful. And we resolved in our heart through some mostly just prayer and decision. Okay, God sent us his child and we believe that he's a blessing, and we treated him so, and boy, that turned out to be the case. So it definitely increased our prayer life to a huge amount, and our faith a lot, and certainly we had some challenges, but they were nothing compared to what the blessings, so there were some medical challenges along the way, but we had medical challenges with other children too. So if we have a child that breaks a leg, we get it fixed. That's just the way parents are. You don't decide that it's got a value, okay, it costs too much, because we would give everything we had for any one of our children, including him. Certainly there's parts of Jesse that extremely enhance our family dynamics and that have made us all better people for who he is and for how he loves and how he interacts with each one of us. So I would say that definitely is been a great benefit to every single child in our family to have Jesse here. There tends to be a certain quality of Down's children that is unique amongst them. Many people say they're more like each other than they are like us. And so one characteristic of Down syndrome is their lovingness and their kindness and their affection and some people just say the sweetness factor that they have. A lot of times we think that when we first had Jesse that we're there for him, but boy, I can't tell you how much he's been there for us and in our life, and how he just loves up on people, and he loves them, and he hugs them, and he listens, and he has a special intuition about their what they need and what they feel, and if somebody's sad or they're happy, he knows these things, and almost an extra above what we have intuition about those feelings. Everybody engages him on his level. It certainly helped our children to understand that somebody that has a little different needs is not somebody that you have to shy away from, that you can engage with and be a part of. And certainly there's a lot of other people in our lives now that have become very much part of our lives that wouldn't have been a part of our lives otherwise. I definitely see a big ministry that Jesse has to people, to what it's almost like they're an angel there, to love people in the moments they need to be loved. And sometimes his senses are uncanny in knowing somebody that's hurting and going and meeting that person's needs. And we just get to watch on and go, wow, that was amazing. He knows everybody, and he gets to know them, and he says like, show him friend. He has friends, and he goes, friend. He tells me everybody's his friends, and he's got to go around. It takes us quite a while to get out of a place because he has to go and give everybody their hugs, right? Tell them goodbye and tell them how much he loves them. So being so expressive, he definitely is the life and the energy in a party. Just the way that he loves his dad is amazing. And he loves everybody else the same way. So, but he loves Daddy so much, don't you, buddy? Yeah.
My daddy!
Hi, Jesse. Oh, I miss you so much, buddy. How are you?
Good.
Good. I love you.
Good.
Abortion, by definition, is never good for the baby. But is it ever helpful for a mother? Does it help a woman who has been raped or molested? Does it help the parents of special needs children? Does abortion ever save a life? We have heard from the people who have actually been involved in these difficult circumstances, and we see that abortion is not necessary, even in the most extreme situations. If you have had an abortion or have indirectly supported abortion in some way, consider that abortion is a serious sin, and sin elicits the wrath of Almighty God. There is nothing that you can do to atone for your own sin. But in Jesus Christ is infinite merit and forgiveness. In Him alone there is hope and redemption.
I would like to ask you please to consider the fact that I was that poster child that the pro-choice crowd likes to use. I was the 13-year-old daughter who had been raped for many, many years. I was the one who had had an abortion already. I was the one who had a child at 13. I had no money. I had no place to go. My mom had no job. We had nothing. There is no excuse. If we could make it through this and come through victorious with God's help, you can too. And if you support abortion in cases of rape and incest, please don't. Please consider the fact that you are taking away that mother's hope and her future. The one thing, the one beautiful good thing that could come out of that horrible situation. That's all I had.
To any woman out there who thinks that it might be okay in cases of rape to have an abortion, I'm a prime example of that not being true. I was a victim of date rape, and as a result of the abortion, I'm no longer able to have children. I wasn't ever able to have my own kids. So it not only affected me emotionally and spiritually, but also physically as well, and affected the rest of my family as well.
Hi, I'm Judah Myers, and I'm the founder of Choices for Life. We're an organization dedicated to helping the women and children of rape conception. If you were pregnant by rape, raising a child out of rape, or if you've even aborted that child, we're here to help. You're not alone. So many other women have gone through what you have gone through, and we're here to support you. ChoicesForLife.org.